Welcome to our video documentary on environmental science. My name is Bob Botanical, and I'll be your host for this show. This week's program focuses on the environmental issue of habitat fragmentation. We have very special reports that will take a close look and give you, our audience, a deeper understanding of what causes this phenomenon. To tell you more, here's Johnny Appleseed, two-time valedictorian and PhD holder from the Cambridge Institute of Environmental Science. We miss you over here in Cambridge, Johnny.
How do you do, Bob Botanical? I'm going to start off by telling you about a fish species that's affected by habitat fragmentation right here in Georgia. The Etowah darter is an endemic species of fish, of course, in the Etowah River, and its two tributaries, including the Long Swamp and Amicalola Creek. An endemic species is a species that is found in only one area and is especially vulnerable to extinction.
So tell us, Johnny, how does one recognize the Etowah darter?
Well, Bob, these fish can be recognized by gray or brown coloration and have prominent dark spots on their sides. These fish spawn near pebbles and rocks on the riverbed floor.
And what sorts of challenges have the darters been facing?
Their habitats are being destroyed by human dam construction, silt buildup, as well as surface runoff. Firstly, the Allatoona Dam, which is that way, its creation led to a separation of Etowah darters as some of the fish were partitioned from their own populations, which has begun to lead to geographic isolation. Geographic isolation is the separation of populations of a species for long times in different areas. In addition, the dam slowed the river's natural flowing, resulting in a reduction of water quality. Next, nearby suburban growth without regard for the installation of silt fences along creeks and streams contributes to the buildup of silt that flows into the Etowah River. Impacted by silt buildup because silt completely buries their desired habitat and food sources as it tends to sink to the bottom of rivers. Consequently, there is no place to deposit their fertilized eggs. This results in the Etowah darters having to find new habitats to occupy and reproduce in. Here now is a simulation of what would happen to the Etowah darters' nests. Silt buildup from surrounding areas near the river would inhibit the nests, preventing eggs from being placed there. Finally, nitrates and phosphates from laundry detergents and fertilizers mix in with runoff and get concentrated in large amounts in sluggish-moving waters near the dam. Eutrophication exists here. Eutrophication occurs in areas such as lakes and slow-moving regions of rivers where an excess of supply of nutrients needed by producers are introduced into the water. The producers, including algae, produce algal blooms which cover the water's surface, preventing light to penetrate the water. With no light, producers die and are decomposed by aerobic bacteria. These aerobic bacteria make the water anoxic as they decompose the dead plants and release even more organic nutrients into the water. With no oxygen, fish, such as the Etowah darter, will die. Therefore, Etowah darters must search for new habitats in areas that aren't plagued by eutrophication from surface runoff.
Wow! Johnny, I've got to say, the American way of life seems to be deeply ingrained in who we are and how we act. Are there any solutions to these problems being proposed?
Sure thing, Bob. Surface runoff is one of the largest contributors to water pollution in the USA. One of the most obvious sources stems from America's love for a nice, deep green lawn. Many of us subscribe to a service that sprays or drops nitrogen and phosphorus-infused fertilizers on our grass up to 7 times per year. These chemicals leach through the soil and flow into creeks and streams that feed larger bodies of water. I propose that the Environmental Protection Agency implement education of this issue and phase out a program which would build awareness of the harmful effects among property owners and ultimately require these chemical treatments to be phased out over the next 10 years. The education portion could be performed by the companies who now provide these chemical services, and I'll tell you why. This will give them an opportunity to transition their business model into both educators and vendors of earth-friendly landscape design and maintenance services, thereby not closing down a thriving industry. Those companies that fail to discontinue offering chemical services within the 10-year window would be shut down, and the company's officers would be subjected to rigid penalties. The Environmental Protection Agency would also need to incentivize property owners to shift toward a healthy yardscape by imposing penalty fees for yards which test positive for these chemicals and offering a tax break for those who declare that they have stopped using the chemicals at least 3 years before the deadline, 10 years, arrives and the yard tests negative for these chemicals. The perfectly green yard is a man-made vision. Now we need to educate people on what it is like and strive for that change.
That sounds like a plan that could really work so long as we get the right people behind the movement. Can you tell us about Tell us more.
Well, as we all know, Bob, Brazil is notorious for its depletion of trees. Deforestation is the removal of trees from forested areas without adequate replacement. The timber is used as fuel wood, guitar parts, and to supply the industry. Forests are also clear-cut due to urbanization, cattle herding, road building, and agriculture of soy and rice fields. As the forests become depleted, something called the edge effect begins to occur. The edge effect occurs in areas where there is one type of community that transitions to a different type of community. These edge effects create barriers between differing communities. As deforestation makes the Rio Branco antbirds' already tiny habitat even smaller, the edge effects increase more, resulting in lower breeding rates and higher competition for food.
Sounds quite serious. Quite serious indeed. What does your research tell you about a possible solution?
Deforestation has continuously led to the fragmentation of habitats, populations, food sources, as well as biodiversity. In order to remedy this issue, amendments should be made to provisions such as the Endangered Species Act of 1973 to include a section regarding the following. 85% of the trees cut down and used for commercial reasons must be replaced by replanting second growth forests to replenish the ability for organisms dependent on those trees to continue to survive, and also so that the economic resources are conserved for ourselves and our posterity. Furthermore, another amended section should include that when cutting down forests, selective cutting must be used instead of clear cutting, as selective cutting ensures that some nutrients and minerals remain in that soil. It is crucial that clear cutting not be used because it leads to erosion since there are no roots to hold the soil in place, and also harms biodiversity the most.
This is all quite fascinating. Is there another example that you can share with us?
Well, during my 12-year study at the Cambridge Institution of Environmental Science, I came across one more species that was victim of the same environmental issue. Blue whales are the largest and heaviest organisms known in the world. Its heart is larger than a compact car. They are extremely important to marine ecosystems as they maintain a healthy balance in the aquatic food chain.
So, how can these earthly giants be as vulnerable to habitat fragmentation as other species?
Well, Bob, let me tell you one thing about nature. Size does not guarantee survival. Blue whales are greatly affected by trawler fishing. Trawler fishing is a kind of overharvesting of fish that involves dragging an extensive open net weighed down by metals and chains across the ocean floor. It scrapes away anything that it's in its way, sort of like clear-cutting forest, and also catches bycatch. Bycatch is the unintentional capture of marine species while fishing for other species of fish. Unfortunately, blue whales are some of those victims. This is an enormous problem in areas such as Baja California, Mexico. Avaricious fishermen refuse to spare the lives of blue whales when caught as bycatch because it would mean releasing all the other fish that they just spent a bunch of time and money catching. Because of trawler fishing, areas where blue whales used to thrive in are now becoming degraded as the trawler nets catch them and destroy coral reefs and other habitats that support krill, the blue whale's exclusive diet.
Phew, this is all quite mind-boggling. How would you sum it all up?
All in all, we're developing amazing technologies which require the consumption of more and more natural resources and the use of vastly harmful chemicals. Experts point to the fact that nature has a natural balance and humans, as a component of that puzzle, need to play a more active role in fostering a healthy balance. Reflecting on the examples just discussed, it begs the question, would any of these scenarios be as dire or exist at all if it were not for the intrusiveness of mankind?